I guess. Can be on repeat mode.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're here with Emily Gomer. She is your podcast engineer. We have a recording. We have something that is available to you. Emily's going to play it for a short time. What?
Okay, I guess I'll just play it for a short time. I just want to tell you that we're on repeat mode. So
yeah, we're live on YouTube, and you're doing a live YouTube showing them what you do at liveradio.love. And so, yeah, short program that you'll play a few times, and then the next half hour, 45 minutes or whatever, you'll end it, and away you go. Love Live, available every day, 24/7, 365. Come on, Emily, do a program. Make it something people want to watch and listen to. Let's go.
Give me the sound of praise.
You think this is about you? Oh, this is about Yeshua HaMashiach. This is Love Live Ruach Remnant Reality Radio. I'm Rev Rock and I'm a Yahjeh for Yahweh, bringing it to you.
Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's word study. Today we're going to cover two Odiot studies. One, we're going to look at, what it means to fear Yahweh. The word always says, fear Yahweh. And a lot of people have the same reaction to that. Fear him. What is he, a monster? Is he going to kill us? So we're going to look at that. And also we're going to look at the original Aramaic with an Odiot study for hosts. Yahweh of hosts. What does that mean? Hosts. There's a bunch of hosts? This is why we do the Odiot. These English terms are strange. So anyway, we're going to start off with what does it mean to fear Yahweh? The word we see as fear, or afraid in English, comes from the original Aramaic Hebrew word yareh, and that is Strong's number H3372. Strong's says that it means to fear or to revere. That one's good. It also says to cause to frighten, to be or to make afraid, dread, dreadful, fearful, terrible. And, when they give all these different definitions, like in Strong's or Vines or whatever, they're looking at all these different places in the word where something like yareh would come up. And then they look at all these different situations and they try and put it all together and they give you all these different definitions. But if you when we do these Odiot studies, there's no need for all those variations. But this is what happens when the Western mindset, which focuses on form, tries to interpret Eastern concepts which focus on function. Of all that Strong's has to say, revere is the best, for sure. We should always have reverence for Abba, Father. But, you know, who would ever fear a father whose love for them is so great? For example, my dad and I were extremely close and loved each other beyond measure. And I certainly revered him. I honored him. And I respected him. Because he was such a good man. And you know, his love for me was... It's just amazing, you know. And he was such a good father. When he gave me instruction, I treasured it. I mean, even to this day, there are things that he gave me instruction on that they have stayed with me for decades. An example, you know, one day he said to me, he said, "Son, just don't ever do anything you wouldn't be proud to tell me about." And, you know, I thought about that. And certainly there were times where I did things I wasn't proud to tell him about and things I didn't tell him about. But every time I did those things, I remembered his words. Why? Because I revered him. Now, I never feared him or had any reason to fear him because I knew beyond the shadow of any doubt he would never do anything to harm me. And this is true also with our Father, Abba Yahweh. He would never do anything to harm us. He loves us. Now, there's one aspect of fear that I would share, and that is that I certainly feared doing anything that would ever displease my daddy. You know, I would never want to do anything to displease him or to make him ashamed of me. That was something that I feared doing, you might say. I don't even know if fear fits there, but it's certainly something that, with a passion, you know, I would never want to do anything to displease Abba Father. I want to put him first. I want to please him. I want him to recognize the fact that I love him and I treasure him. I revere him. So there's no reason to fear Yahweh. But we should certainly fear doing anything that would disappoint him. And one other point I would make is this. To anyone who is not making Elohim number one on a list of one in their lives, to anyone who is in love with the things of this world more than the things of Elohim, they should fear Yahweh, not Satan. A lot of people are afraid of the devil. Oh, this evil, you know, it's scary, you know. The movies, you know, that they make are full of fear for evil. Should never fear Satan, but rather Yahweh. Satan's been defeated in the day of Yahweh. Now I'm talking about people who they don't love Yahweh and they don't have Yeshua as their Adon, their master. When the 7-year tribulation comes and the day of the wrath of Yahweh and the day of the wrath of the Lamb, that is something truly to be feared by those who do not love him. Now, all that being said, let's take a look at the Odiot. Yareh is spelled Yod Resh Aleph. Yod, picture of an arm and a hand. Has to do with work, what we make. Has to do with actions, what we do. It has to do with worshiping. Then we have Resh, picture of a man's head. It has to do with who your headship is and what your thoughts are on. Then we have Aleph, picture of an ox's head. It has to do with being yoked to Abba Father, and it has to do with being taught by Abba Father. Now in Genesis chapter 20, verse 8, we read, Abimelech told his servants how Elohim stopped him from committing a grave sin. And the men were yareh. Most English Bibles will say that they were afraid. But the truth is that they were filled with reverence for Elohim. They were concerned about being sure that their work and actions fully took into account their relationship with Elohim. They weren't just, Abimelech tells him this story about how Yahweh kept him from committing a grave sin. And, then you read that they were afraid. What does that mean? They were yareh. They were filled with reverence for Elohim and concerned about their own walk with him. So, wherever you see scriptures that say, fear Yahweh, it truly means that you are to revere him, that you are to be sure that your work and your actions make a full display of your reverence for him, that your worship is of him and him alone, and that instead of thinking about yourself or someone else, you are thinking about Elohim. Elohim is a term that refers to the Father, his Son, and his Ruach HaKodesh, his Kodesh Spirit. So, like I said, instead of thinking about yourself or someone else in any kind of a situation, you should be thinking about Elohim at all times. Now, let's look at this other one I've been asked quite a bit about, and that is Yahweh of Hosts. We see Yahweh of Hosts in the Word. The Hallelujah Scriptures says Yahweh of Hosts. Even the Amplified Bible says Yahweh of Hosts. But the NIV says not hosts, but Almighty. And I like that one much better. A lot of people like to put the NIV down. That's the New International Version. And for years, I always said the NIV gives one of the best English interpretations of what the original Aramaic Hebrew says. And that was my favorite version until the Hallelujah Scriptures came around. And if you don't have Hallelujah Scriptures, check out underneath this video in the More Info section. There's a link seen beneath any one of my videos that will take you over to HallelujahScriptures.com. Now, that's all English. However, Elohim wrote Tsabah. Yahweh Tsabah. Now, Tsabah is Strong's H6635, and it's been interpreted into English as, according to their armies, Exodus 6:26, against them in battle, Joshua 22:33. This is just one word, Tsabah. All her host, Jeremiah 51:3, all the host, Deuteronomy 4:19, an army, 2 Chronicles 26:13, war, Job 10:17, the time appointed, Daniel 10:1. And the list goes on and on and on. But those are all strange. Sabah is spelled Sad, or you could say Tzadi, Beit, Aleph. Tzad, picture of a path, the way. It has to do with hunting or chasing and with righteousness. Tzaddik, that's the word for the righteous one. Then we have Beit, picture of a house. Has to do with family. Has to do with Yeshua. And then Aleph, picture of the ox head. Once again, it has to do with being yoked to Abba, Father, Yahweh. And it has to do with being taught by Abba, Father, Yahweh. And it speaks of Yahweh. So, Yahweh of hosts or Yahweh Almighty Yahweh Tzavah talks about. Yahweh, who is the head of the house. What house? The house of his family, of his children, those who are yoked to him and taught by him, those who walk the narrow path, the way, with Yeshua as their Adon, as their master. And that's our study for this week, my friends. As always, I hope and I pray that this study and all my videos are a major beracha to you and to yours. And, Abba willing, I'll see you here next week. Until then, shalom, my friends.
Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day. Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remains. You say
Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's word study. Today we're going to cover two Odiot studies. One, we're going to look at, what it means to fear Yahweh. The word always says, fear Yahweh. And a lot of people have the same reaction to that. Fear him? Is he a monster? Is he gonna kill us? So we're going to look at that. And also we're going to look at the original Aramaic with an Odiot study for hosts. Yahweh of hosts. What does that mean? Hosts. There's a bunch of hosts? This is why we do the Odiot. These English terms are strange. So anyway, we're going to start off with what does it mean to fear Yahweh? The word we see as fear, or, afraid in English, comes from the original Aramaic Hebrew word yareh, and that is Strong's number H3372. Strong's says that it means to fear or to revere. That one's good. It also says to cause to frighten, to be or to make afraid, dread, dreadful, fearful, terrible. And, when they give all these different definitions, like in Strong's or Vine's or whatever, they're looking at all these different places in the word where something like yareh would come up. And then they look at all these different situations and they try and put it all together and they give you all these different definitions. But
somebody will say, well, come on, what kind of a Shabbat rest is that? That's very obvious that a person's, so to speak, suffering. But the answer to that is, as my late uncle, Rabbi Oziel Molesky, once explained, the Torah talks to generalities. The Torah gives us laws for the general, normal situations. And the brilliance of it is that we keep it to it at all costs, because once we start saying, well, in that case it's different, in that case it's different, that's the beginning of the end of the unraveling of the law. So we keep the law because most of the time the spirit of the law and the letter of the law coincide. They coalesce with each other. And most of the time a person's not stuck on the highway somewhere, and therefore they don't have a problem with food because the food's already cooked before Shabbat. They don't have a problem with lights because lights are set on and off with timers all around the house, kosher lamp, whatever it is, paid for by kosher lamp. Right? So everything is set up. There's no problem for them. They're not living with this framework of no. That's what we have to appreciate. Shabbat is that time a person can live in harmony with nature. I've set everything up. I have time now set aside 25 hours to spend with my family, to spend time spiritually growing and so on, as we get to in a minute. What are the positive sides of Shabbat? But the negatives are not felt if it's done right, because a person just sets himself up for 25 hours where everything is already done. There's no need to focus on the things you can't do, except in rare occasions or exceptions, and therefore a person can just live in harmony with creation. That's the idea of emulating God's rest in Shabbat. Just like Shabbat, God rested and did not interfere, it no longer interfered with His creation and said, that's it, I'm going to live in harmony with my creation and not tamper with it. So too, we rest in Shabbat by not exhibiting our mastery over anything that we have. We leave things as they are for the next 25 hours, and that's the beautiful harmony of what Shabbat is. This takes me to this idea about the exhibiting of peace, of mastery over nature, and not interfering with Shabbat and living in harmony. This takes us to number 6. We know Shabbat is called Shabbat Shalom. And a lot of people say, which is Shabbat Shalom. Some say good Shabbos. It's all good. Some say Shabbos Tova. If you want to be fancy, you can say it in Aramaic. I think like Mel Gibson does. Right? What does Shabbat Shalom mean? It's a Shabbos of peace. In what sense do we mean that the Shabbos is the Shabbos of peace? So Rabbi Becher says something very nice in his wonderful book, Gateway to Judaism. He says there are 3 areas which potentially can cause conflict in people's lives during the work week. There is a tension between man and nature, especially when nature is disastrous and the weather is horrible, or in pollution or whatever else it might be. A lot of tension between man and nature. I would say cell phones, for example, is a great area of conflict between man and nature. A person would want to have a nice time, an enjoyable time, enjoying the beautiful world that God gave us, but the technology out there, which is good technology, is still at the same time, it can certainly cause a conflict where a person doesn't have the ability to enjoy nature, and it creates that wedge between me and the beautiful world around me because I don't see it. But that's one area of conflict between man and nature. And the second area of conflict is between man and man, our fellow man, our competitors especially. Right? That's an area of tension. There's the shoe store across the street. They're making more money than man. There are more customers. So it's an area of tension. And finally, a third area of tension is between man and self, between my bodily needs and my soul needs. So part of me is pushing me to eat that chocolate cake and to do all types of things I shouldn't do. And there's a soul element in me that's the guilty conscience, the good part of me that's saying I shouldn't do it. These are 3 areas which can cause a lack of peace, a great lack of peace throughout the week. But of course Shabbat comes along. Shabbat Shalom, it's a Shabbat of peace. And it's a beautiful cure, it's a beautiful antidote to these 3 areas of tension. Number 1, in terms of the ability to enjoy nature, not to have that conflict between man and nature. We shut off our cell phones. It's the greatest thing, I think the greatest byproduct of Shabbat is the idea that a person can actually have the power to shut off all technology. And just like the phone can ring all day long, I don't even hear it. I don't have my television on. I don't have my cell phone, nothing. I'm just free to enjoy the world around me and to live in harmony with nature and not to have that interference at all, which is a beautiful thing, and that's what Shabbat creates. It also creates a tremendous peace between man and man because, you're not working anymore. A person can sit back once every 7 days and say, you know what, God, I won't work today. I'm not going to have that competition with my neighbor. I'm just going to chill out, enjoy Shabbat for what it is. And finally, between man and himself, where a person's bodily needs and soul needs, they both taken care of in Shabbat. Both of them. And that brings me to number 7 actually. There's actually a rabbinical commandment to make sure that the conflict doesn't exist between body and soul. And that's a rabbinical commandment called Oneg Shabbat. Oneg means enjoyment, pleasure. Oneg Shabbat is a commandment. The rabbi said we should have ourselves oneg on Shabbat, which means, number 1, we should eat good food that gives us pleasure. I always say a vegetarian, if they don't get pleasure from meat, so they shouldn't eat meat. But somebody who gets pleasure from eating meat should eat meat. It's sort of subjective. But either way, anything that gives you pleasure, an oneg, you should eat. Of course, drinking as well, a good bottle of scotch, a single malt, or a can of Coke, whatever it is you might like, it also gives oneg. He goes so far as to say that even the rabbi said if one should have marital relations on Friday night with one's spouse. That also gives the person a certain oneg. It's all part of this idea of having oneg, of having pleasure in Shabbat. But it's interesting, for some people they don't see that. They don't see the oneg part of it. They see it as something which is, oh no, not another Shabbat of restrictions. There's two ways to look at Shabbat. There's two ways to look at everything in the world, but certainly Shabbat. You can see it as oneg, it's a pleasure, or you can see it as a nega, which is the same word as an anagram. The word nega is the Hebrew word for it's a plague. I can see this as a plague, something which is really a hindrance. I can't stand this restrictive Shabbat thing. Or you can see it as the biggest pleasure in the world because it releases all these tensions and areas of conflict. You know the difference between oneg, pleasure, and the Hebrew word for nega, plague? Depends where you place the ayin in that word. Right? If you look at the word oneg in number 7, oneg is spelled ayin nun gimel. I don't have it in Hebrew here. Ayin is first in the word oneg. If you place the word ayin, the letter ayin in the end of it, it becomes nega. Ayin also means eye. The person, it depends where you place your eye, how you view it. You can see the next 25 hours of Shabbat as the greatest oneg, the greatest pleasure possible. But if you want to see it that way, you can see it that way. Also, if you place your eye in a different place, you put your eye in a different part of the word, you can see it as one big long fat string of no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that, restriction, plague, and so on and so forth. But the idea of Shabbat is supposed to bring us, the rabbis want to ensure that it happens, bring us this beautiful harmony between body and soul, and therefore they said they didn't trust us to do it ourselves. They said make sure you enjoy yourself in Shabbat, so that not just your soul should be calmed by Shabbat and enjoying Shabbat, but your body should also be fed well, and also drinking properly, enjoying himself. It's very important. Sorry? Too much is no good. Too much of anything is no good, right? It's an interesting idea that Baal Shem Tov once explained. He said, what's the idea of Oneg Shabbat? Because it seems to be, it's a little bit counter to the holiness of Shabbat. Shabbat's a holy time, yet there's this big, I don't know in your family, but in my family, there's a big focus on food. And I think in all Jewish families, and Italian families too. But there's a big focus on food, and maybe a little too much, certainly in my family. And I always wonder, is this exactly the most spiritual thing in the world? There's a lot of, where does it come from, this whole idea of eating? I know it's a rabbinical commandment, but how does it work? So I once heard a beautiful idea in the name of the Baal Shem Tov. He said like this, he said, once upon a time there was a fellow who was thrown into jail, wrongfully thrown into jail. And he missed his wife and children terribly, but he had no way to get to speak to them. But his wife used to send him every single week, she used to send him on Friday a letter. And he wanted to sit down and read that letter, because he missed his wife terribly. Problem is, every time he sat down in the corner to open up the letter, he'd get roughed up by some of those tough guys in jail. They try to beat him up like it typically happens in jail. So he couldn't do anything. So he had this brilliant idea. He said, I'm going to write a letter to my wife and have her bake a cake for me. Inside the cake, I want her to buy and put in the best single malt scotch or vodka you could find, hide it inside this pudding or pudding cake, whatever cake it is, and bring it to me. So she does that. She brings him the cake. He takes it into his cell. Feels, in the middle of it, pulls out the vodka or scotch, whatever it is. He says, okay, guess what, everyone? Here's some scotch. And they go, ew, and they start drinking until they're all flat on their backs, and they're snoring and content and all drunk. Now, when they're all drunk and everything's quiet, he can take out all those love letters and reconnect with the love of his life that he's been missing for so many years. Says the Holy Baal Shem Tov, that's exactly what we're all about. Every Shabbat, we want to reconnect. Take out that love letter, which is the Torah, the Bible that God gave us, the ultimate love letter where God says, I love you and I want you to have maximum meaning in your life. And here's this love letter. And we want to enjoy it, but that stomach of ours, that ruffian, says, give me food, give me drink, give me this, give me coke, give me... So we say, okay, we give them cake, we give them food, we give the stomach whatever it needs until the stomach is happy, it has all the oneg and pleasure that it can want, and then you go, now I could sit back, I could sing Zmiros and these beautiful songs and reconnect with God, reconnect with my family and so on. That's the oneg of Shabbat, that's what it's all about, and that's why we have Shabbat Shalom, it's the time of Shalom. Why is it Shalom? Because it brings peace. Peace between man and his environment, peace between man and his competitors and other people, and peace between man and himself and his bodily needs. It's a tremendous peace that Shabbat provides as well. So again, just to sum up now, so far we've said Shabbat, of course, is more than a day of rest. Not that we don't need rest. We have a hard time in our days creating rest. But it's much more than that. It's a cornerstone of our faith. It's living this idea in practice, in ritual, crafting our faith into a practical ritual which has staying power through the generations. Living this idea that by the way we emulate God by resting on the seventh day, this idea, the powerful idea of Judaism that God created us, purposeful created for a purpose, that we have meaning to our lives. And the rules of Shabbat also, again, fit in very well because the rules are about not tampering with the world. God rested on the seventh day. He didn't interfere with creation. We live in harmony with creation every 7 days. But there's another element to Shabbat, and it's with everything in Judaism as well, as we'll see in the next couple of classes. There are so many different layers upon layers. There's never one just, okay, here's the idea of Shabbat in 20 minutes, and there's no such thing. There's layers upon layers. Here's another layer of Shabbat. Shabbat is a time to return to ourselves, Turn to Judaism, to return to ourselves. Look at the root of the word Shabbat. The root of the word Shabbat is Shin Bet, which means shav, to return. The Maharal of Prague says a fascinating thing. He says, you look at a person's life as if his life is represented by the Aleph Bet, starting from Aleph, the beginning of a person's life, till Taf, the end of a person's life. The Aleph represents the beginning of one's life because Aleph, for many reasons. Number one, Aleph, well, it's the first letter, obviously. Aleph is an aluf. Aluf is a general, the guide. It represents our neshama, our soul, our spiritual soul, which is our inner guide, our seichel, our intellect. Aleph is also a silent letter. Just like a very spirituality is very intangible and silent. Many people don't even know if they even have a soul or a spiritual side. It's very silent. The Aleph is almost always a silent letter. For example, you're sitting right now on in Hebrew, a kisei. That's what it's called. A chair is called a kisei. If you took the last letter, the Aleph, away from that word, you wouldn't fall off the chair. Right? It would still be kisei without the Aleph. Aleph is a silent letter. So too our neshama, our spiritual side, is also silent. So everyone starts off in this world with an Aleph, the beautiful neshama, which their soul, which is granted silent and somewhat hiding, but there for sure to guide us in life, if we can tap into it to guide us. What happens in life? We start moving, we go to the next letter, Bet, Beis, whatever we pronounce it, and Bet represents the idea of making a bayit, or boneh, building. We build our lives, we start from our core, and hopefully we build our lives with the decisions that we make, the free will decisions, and so on, until we get to the last letter, which is Taf, which represents death. First of all, it's the last letter, that's why it's death, that's at the end. Plus also, I like to say when you die, it's tough, right? Anyway, but once you're already at the Taf, it's too late. If you're still at the Shin, it means you haven't yet reached the end yet, you still have time, you're still alive. Then you can go from Shin and be Shav, return, Shin all the way back to Bet, Shin, Bet, all the way. As long as your Aleph, your core, is still intact, as long as your Aleph, you haven't corrupted your some people are so wicked, they corrupt their Aleph, there's nothing left to go back to, they've corrupted their core. But for all of us, it's not like that. We just may have made some mistakes, some layers, but the inner layer is pure. As long as the inner layer is pure, the Aleph, you can go back, you can be Shav. That's why the word Shav is the root for the word return, because it's Shin, the letter Shin, before you're dead, and then you have it's too late. Shin, all the way back to Bet, to return. Shabbat is a time to return to who we are. It's a very powerful idea. I once heard, actually said this in Shabbat at the village shul, my late uncle, Rabbi Mozil Malevsky Zatzal, shared a beautiful idea about Havdalah. What Havdalah is all about. We know that after Shabbat, we have a beautiful ritual, and part of the ritual involves looking at our fingernails. Everyone knows about this. We look at our fingernails. Now the question is, why are we looking at our fingernails on Shabbat, Motzei Shabbat, after it's over, we're making Havdalah? And one of the main halachic reasons is because you're not supposed to make a blessing on something unless you actually partake of it, either eat it or enjoy it in some way. Otherwise you're disconnected from it. So if you have a fire that's, in Japan, and you're not going to be enjoying it, so you can't make a bracha, a blessing on it. You have to be close enough in proximity to the fire to be able to benefit in some way from its light. So therefore we hold our hands up like this to see if we can differentiate by the light of the candle, if we're close enough to differentiate between the nail and the skin, because they're not the same. If you're close enough that you can see the difference between the nail and the skin, then you've benefited, you're enough close to benefit from the candle, and your blessing is okay. That's the technical, halachic, ritualistic reason, one of them at least, why we do this. But Rabbi Malevsky shared a beautiful idea about that, the concept of Shabbat being a time to get clarity. Rabbi Malevsky said as follows. We have a beautiful tradition that Adam and Eve, before they sinned in the Garden of Eden and partook of this forbidden fruit and caused all this distortion in the world, that they were entirely covered, their entire bodies were covered, they didn't have clothing on, but they were entirely covered with a nail-like substance. After they partook for the forbidden fruit, then the nail-like substance receded from the bodies and was only left on their fingernails and toenails. And that's the official reason, the Jewish traditional reason why we have nails. Evolutionists will say something else, I'm sure. This is the official reason why Judaism believes why we have the nail left over here, because God said, He took it all away from you by leaving it over here. What does this mean? Says Rabbi Malevsky. What does nail represent? You go to a nail salon, you sit there, and someone's cutting your nails and you're not screaming. They're cutting you. Why aren't you jumping up and down in pain, in agony? But then the answer, of course, is that they're cutting something which is on you, but it's not you. You have this clarity about the nail. Oh, it's just on top of me, but it's not really me. Try cutting my finger off and I'll sue. I'm American, we sue for everything. Right? So, but obviously then you feel it. But if it's a nail represents something which is on me, yet it's not me. Adam and Eve, before they created this distortion to partaking of the forbidden fruit, they had such clarity who they were. They knew they weren't just the physical body, they were the soul. They had clarity about who they were. to the point that the whole body was covered by nail, meaning either metaphorically or real, whatever, we're not clear. But that means that they had a clarity about their skin that it was like nail, meaning that it covered them, and yet it wasn't them. Their bodies just covered who they really were. They had that nail-like clarity they got. But of course, once they took for the forbidden fruit, they lost that clarity, and God did us a favor and allowed for them to have a little bit of a reminder of that clarity by leaving a little bit of a remnant of that on the ends of our fingers and toenails. When do we have a chance to regain a little bit of that clarity about what's important? When do we have a chance to return to ourselves? When we push away everything else and we have no more conflicts and we have peace and harmony with creation, we have no pressure from the cell phone or from trying to tamper with creation. When do we have that time to get some clarity as to what's important in life, what a priority should be? And Shabbat, that's when we have that time. That's what Shabbat's all about. It's a time to get that clarity, to be shoved, to return to ourselves, to realize what's important in the world instead of just work. Stop for a second. Think about what's important in life. But the problem is, though, we're going back again. It only lasts 24 hours. Unfortunately, sadly, we start losing that clarity as we're going back into the work week, especially in Israel where they work all 6 days a week. Well, that's true. That's exactly what you do. You look at your fingernails and you say to yourself, this clarity that I once had over the last 25 hours, I'm going to bring this back with me into the week. That's when you look at your nails. So take one last look at your nails and say, 1 second, the nail. That's what my whole body used to be like, because this is not just me. And I'm going to go to the gym and work out tomorrow night, Sunday night maybe, but I'm also going to go to a Torah class and work out my spiritual soul too. You get that clarity in Shabbat. That's another aspect, another layer of Shabbat as well. It's a time to return to ourselves and a time to get the clarity about who we truly are. I want to share with you, we'll stop for questions after we finish. I want to share with you, before we get our book recommendations, another beautiful idea, which again talks to the idea of what Shabbat's all about, another layer. There was a story about a great rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. He was the chief rabbi of Israel in the 20s and 30s, in the early years of what's called the old Yishuv, the old population of Jews living in Jerusalem. Very, very, very precious Jew. It's just one of the stories to tell about him, which is interesting for today, that he was going to meet with the head of the British High Command, I forget his name, and the apartment that Rabbi Sonnenfeld lived in the old city of Jerusalem, I think in Rehov Batei Machsa, which is still there, was a hole in the wall, literally a hole in the wall. It was a cave of some sort. And he was the chief rabbi, remember. This is how he lived. And he had to also bend down a lot because a lot of it was very low. He kept on hitting his head. And he was now going to entertain the chief High Commissioner Herbert, I forget his name exactly, whoever it was, entertain him in this hovel. And all the rabbi's students said, please, Rabbi, you can't do this. You can't bring him in here. It's embarrassing for the entire city of Jerusalem, for the Jewish people. He said, I'm sorry, but I have to. And the commissioner comes in with him and starts asking him, Rabbi, they don't give you a decent salary here? Like, you're living in this dump? But he says to the commissioner, come with me. He shows them one of the windows that looks out onto the Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount. And he said, you see over there? God's house used to be there, and it was a beautiful house. And then it was destroyed. I can't bring myself to build myself this beautiful mansion when God's house is in shambles. That was the sensitivity that this great rabbi had. But there's a story that's told about one Friday night when his wife was sick, and he asked the next door neighbor, who was this non-Torah observant Jew, if he would be able to come, it was a doctor, come over with the lantern and to help him heal his wife. And he came over, of course, and we know the halacha, the Jewish law says that whenever it's a case of endangerment of life, then of course all the laws of Shabbat fall by the wayside, so of course you do whatever you have to do. Sorry? Exactly, pikuach nefesh is the Hebrew word for it, thank you. Pikuach nefesh means a case of danger, so here is a case of danger, and he called the doctor and he lit a lantern, fine. As they're walking back to the doctor's house, and he thanks the doctor profusely, he thought it would be a good time to impress upon him one of the ideas, one of the layers and themes of what Shabbat observance is all about. He said the following, he said, imagine if you were to create a picture of a human being, an artistic rendering of a human being, and you have to do it proportionally to size. What do you think would be the ratio in height, not in weight, not in volume, but in height, of an average person's head to the rest of their body? In other words, not like a baby. Baby's like it's all head and a little bit of body, right? But most people, normal people, they have a certain ratio. There's an average, I looked it up later on to see if it's actually true. There's a standard ratio, 1 to... So it's actually Greek. I saw Greek drawings online. Google must be right if it's Google. It said 1 to 7. In other words, 7 of these would make up a person. 1 plus 6 more would be the average person. Okay, what's the point of all this? Where we're going with all this? Rabbi Sonnenfeld said to the doctor, he said, well, once upon a time, all the limbs and the limbs of the body and organs ganged up on the head. And they said, hey, head, this isn't fair. This is really, it's just unfair because we have to do all the schlepping around and carrying heavy things. You get to do all the good stuff. You get to have all the good food and the drink and the schmooze, all the great schmoozing. It's just not fair. So the head says to the rest of the body, of course that's fair. Of course I deserve more than you. Who do you think plans out your actions and makes them meaningful? If it weren't for me planning it out and prioritizing and giving meaning and choice and thinking in advance of what you're doing, then there would be no point to what you're doing. You'd just be running around literally like a chicken without a head. So the doctor was a very smart man. The doctor says, oh, I get it, Rabbi. Shabbat is also that 1/7 of the week. It's the head of the week. It's that one day of the week when a person stops from what they're doing and gives meaning and prioritizes their life in such a way that they don't just go on, because sometimes a person goes on. The same idea you find, by the way, for Rosh Hashanah as well. Rosh Hashanah is called the head of the year, right? Rosh Hashanah. That's a very strange way to refer to the New Year. We should call it Shana Chadasha, Happy New Year. We don't do that. We say Happy Head of the Year, Rosh Hashanah. Why is it the head of the year? Why is it, if anything, it should be the beginning of the year? Because the head represents the idea that a person doesn't just go through year after year after year, but they stop and they plan with that head of theirs what I'm going to do next year, what I should do different from last year, what I should continue. Shabbat's the same thing as well. Shabbat is that 1/7. It's the head of the week, that time of year, week I should say, when we plan out and make all our choices meaningful. I have a friend, Rabbi Mordechai Ryan, who wrote a wonderful book, which I'm not sure if it's available anymore, but you can check it out online. In addition to the 2 recommendations here, number 10, it's called The Magic of Shabbos. And in there he has a beautiful story, which I'll finish with, which will tie it all together. The story is told about this fellow. He's working in he's a salesman working in the deep south, somewhere in Texas. It's Friday afternoon. Now he always carries with him, it's always a good idea if you have to travel late right before Shabbat, although it's not a good idea to travel before Shabbat. It's one of the halachot, the Jewish laws, not to do that, but a person has to travel for whatever reason, should always bring a little Shabbat kit. So he had a little Shabbat kit. The kit had in it candles to light, and which is not just for women, it's for men as well. Again, I don't have a chance to discuss the myriad laws of Shabbat tonight in the limited time that we have, but Shabbat candles are primarily done by the woman of the house, but if the man is alone, he lights candles himself. So this fellow, this salesman in the deep south, he carried with him his Shabbat kit. It had 2 candles. It had the Kiddush cup and the little Kedem grape juice bottle. He had himself 2 chali rolls, of course, and then he even had the gefilte fish with the horseradish in a little closed cup and the carrot on top. You have to have. I took my kids once to PJ's Pet Store, which I think is no longer there, and we looked at a fish we wanted to buy, and the fish was a white-looking fish, which had right over here on top had an orange thing. The kid said, "Gefilte." We bought it right away. It was fantastic. So he had this whole kit. Fine. So he's looking for a place to stop, and he's nowhere anything. He's nowhere any place to stop. No house, no hotel, nothing. He's coming closer and closer to Shabbos. Finally, it's getting really dark. It's almost shki. It's almost sunset. He says, the next place, next house, next structure I see, I'm pulling in there, I'm staying there no matter what. Turns out the place he stops at is the county jail. Okay, gets out of his car with his kit, rushes into the county jail. He says, listen, I'm a Shabbos observant Jew and I can't drive anymore. Is it okay if I leave my car here in the parking lot? I'll stay in the lobby, I'll pay you. Just let me stay in your lobby for the next 25 hours. So the warden says, you don't have to pay me or anything for you. You can leave your car wherever you want. But you just can't stay in the lobby. You got to keep the lobby clean. If you want, you can stay in one of the cells. Having no choice, he gets into one of the cells. There are other people there, hardened criminals. He gets into a corner, hides himself into a corner, and he sits down, and he pulls out the 2 candlesticks, puts them on the floor, makes a blessing, and then he pulls out his grape juice. And then the inevitable happens. He gets a tap on his shoulder. Hey, you! So he looks back, and it's one of these hardened criminals, and the guy says to him, what are you in for? I think that's how they say it in Texas, by the way. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia 4 years, so I'm pretty close. What are you in for? So he says, Shabbos. That's a strange thing to say. And then the guy says, Shabbos? And what do you get for it? And he says, life. Shabbos is truly a way to get a life for Jewish people. It is what kept the Jewish people for so long. Why did it keep us so, just to tie it all together, why did Shabbat keep the Jewish people more than the Jewish people kept Shabbat? Because if you have something to live for, if you believe that your life has ultimate meaning and purpose, because you believe in a purposeful creator who created you with intention to be involved in the affairs of your life and to care about you, if you believe in that, and not just believe in it, but act it out and live it, and craft your emunah, your actual live it out with making it into a ritual which has staying power, then no matter how difficult things can get for the Jewish people, and God forbid nothing should ever happen, but all through the centuries and millennia of persecution, Jewish people always had that Shabbos. We're always never more than 7 or 6 days away from another Shabbos, which reminded us that everything has ultimate meaning and purpose, and nothing's random, nothing's coincidental. Everything has ultimate meaning to it. And that gave us the power and the ability to go on and to keep the Jewish people. So my blessing to all of us is we should get a life, that we should be able to always enjoy and have an enhanced experience of our Shabbat. And again, the more we learn about it, I recommend these 2 books here, especially Shabbat Day of Eternity and The Gateway to Judaism. These are excellent books which give us more understanding, especially covering all the laws of Shabbat that we didn't discuss this evening.
Welcome to Love Live Ruach Remnant Reality Radio's Shabbat Shalom Jewish Orthodox Day. It's very important to note that this Shabbat Shalom that happens from the goddess or god, whichever it might be, I have to check that, of Frigos or Friday, that many of the songs that even we play that would be considered a Shabbat song are speaking right into us regarding the actual false gods and goddesses. And this is a concern of mine, and it's a Shabbat thought addition to the things that were shared by the previous speaker. And we have so many people that are out there with a view, with an opinion. And many of them, if they're of the rabbi culture, which you're not even supposed to be calling yourself a rabbi technically, they're really, when Yahushua HaMashiach came 2,000 years ago, he was the Rabboni. Many who have seen that I have moved more towards Yisrael wanted to relabel me and rename me as Rabbi Rock instead of Rev Rock. And the Rev Rock, again, is not representing Reverend, which Reverend has an insinuation back into the Christian culture. So I'm not trying to do that. It is revelation, and that is, I think, a good depiction of my faith, is I am one who has continued to have revelation after revelation after revelation, and I hope that you can join me in that Ruach realm of revelation. I hope that you can continue to discover as you recover from religion. Oh, hallelujah. We have it right in the Transformed Recovery literature that one of the addictions that many of us have a tendency to fall into is religion. And we love our religion more than we actually love love itself, or Yahweh, who is love. And that's insane. That is such a deception from the enemy, and it goes and runs so deep that it leaves us baffled when we think of that concept. But when we look around us and we see it all around us in the people that we know, you will see that they love their churches, they love their synagogues, they love their Masonic temples, they love all these different things so much. Now, there was a Fox Nation story. We belong to Fox Nation, and they have a lot of stories on Fox Nation that you will not get on your normal Fox News channels, either Fox Business or regular Fox News or your local Fox News. You're not going to get the things you get on Fox Nation. So they did a documentary on the Freemasons. And, you know, we have a lot of propaganda that's out there regarding Freemasons. And what was refreshing to it was a completely different perspective. But essentially, it does come down to the same problem that Christians, Catholics, Lutherans, and the rest, the rabbis with their different types of Jewish sects or denominations within Judaism, or even within Islam. There are those in Islam that probably know their Bibles better than the Christians do, and they probably know their Bibles much better than the Catholics, and they probably know their Bibles much better than a lot of people who claim that they are Jewish or are in Judaism. And I've met those people, and I have friendships with those people, and have done scripture studies with those people. If you haven't had the experiences that another person has had, then as you listen to them teach, even as I teach, then everything, if you repeat anything that I say without actually testing it and going through it yourself, then everything that you are about is theory. Is that fair? It's not an insult. It's not to diminish you or demolish you or lower you in any way, shape, or form. It's just to state a mere reality that we must look at, and that is, if you're not one that's doing the word, right? If you're not one that's doing the word, then you are one that lives in theory. Everybody else's philosophies, everybody else's theories, and you could classify everything that we share on Love Live Ruach Remnant Reality Radio as we have our own theories. We have our own philosophies. You could state it that way if you wish. But remember that we always challenge you to test everything, and we always challenge you to do it for yourself so that you too can experience true truth. This is a Love for Truth network. This was created so that we would have a voice and a platform to reach the nations. And we're going to be expanding that into more video, because we started really more with television than we did with radio, and then we shifted to radio because it just takes up a lot less bandwidth, and it's easier to get a lot better, stronger virtual connection when Sand and I are at the top of a mountain. Sand and I have been on this Love Live over the last 10 years together. We have been on the tops of mountains, and we've been in the lowest valleys, and we've been from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico. We've been on the border of Canada at Niagara Falls, and we've been in the deepest woods imaginable and the thickest swamps of Florida imaginable, all broadcasting live on Love Live Ruach Remnant Reality Radio. To us, it's not a theory. To Sand and I, it is not a philosophy. To us, it is a reality that we can broadcast truth unto the nations from wherever we are, as long as we got a strong enough mobile connection into this network. If you've ever listened to our pre-recorded broadcasts, you'll hear that sometimes it sounds like people are speaking through a tunnel, that they're in a cave, that they're in some type of an underground corridor. And there's an echo that will come on through, and you'll be totally upset that we don't have the quality perfection of ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and all your other WISN type broadcast networks. And you know what? That's okay. If you want to be upset with us, we're okay with that. Because sometimes, and I've even seen it, even the feed that's coming in when someone's being interviewed on Zoom, on Fox, the most successful media network, who is now in many cases doubling, tripling, and quadrupling, and even more, what the mainstream networks get for the number of people that attend at any given time. When Fox is getting over 20 million watching Tucker Carlson at one time, 20 million people live, not the YouTube clips that come later like our pre-recorded broadcast, but the live broadcast, the live feed, just like this is live right now. 20 million people. And at the time when they're getting 20 million, the competitor shows, because they are shows, it's not reality radios like us, but the show going on CNN is lucky if they can get 1 million. In most cases, they're bottoming out now at their worst ratings ever at about 500,000, and lucky if they hit their old records of the last few years, which is 800,000 at a time. Now, mind you, in all humility, we don't have 800,000 probably that are listening to us live, nor 500,000. In fact, if we get 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000, I'm really happy. And we know that as we move more to Spotify, that our numbers will increase because we are getting great reviews on Spotify from numerous countries. Typically 20 to 30 countries can go ahead and listen as Scribe is doing the hard work, and I appreciate him, and I hope that you all can give him a thanks, maybe even a love gift offering directly to him for all his hard work as a minister of love. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you sending him $100 or $1,000 and saying thanks for working so hard for the kingdom. Nothing wrong with it. Go ahead, send him a love gift. He deserves it. He is taking our Love Live Ruach Remnant Reality Radio to a whole nother level by his diligence, his persistence, and his consistency in making sure that quality broadcasting is going out unto the nations. The message that was pre-recorded that we just previously played was just as good as a previously recorded message as it is or was when it was fresh. And our messages, even though you may hear them throughout the days as something that maybe was played in the morning and done live, or maybe the week before, 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before, 4 weeks before, even months before, you're going to find you're going to get value from it. And that's what I challenge you all to do is when you are taking time to go anywhere, get value. I had a jealous person that came onto my Facebook that criticized why I have 4 Facebooks. With a little bit of research, you could see why he would make the comment that he made. He said, do you always like your own status and put down your name 10 times? Well, first off, I don't put my name down 10 times. I put my name down 4 times. I have 4 identities. Thank you very much. But obviously he was in the sin of sarcasm and also in the sin of jealousy, because if you go to his own wall, you see that he typically gets 0 likes on anything that he does, and the man doesn't have any friends. And the meaningless babble that he throws out there of the Minnesota Vikings type garbage and, you know, Queen Elizabeth and, you know, making a joke, 10 people get drunk, they want to start a fight, 10 people get stoned, they want to start a band, LOL. Ooh, that was really funny. Way to go, Eric. So, we got the people out there who really think there's something. And he posts it. It's a cafe, vodka, mocha, Prozac latte kind of day from the I Love Coffee group. And, of course, that was 3 hours ago. And then he says, without the vodka, LOL. Way to go, Eric. You're a real comedian. And, of course, he's got 1 like and probably will never get any more. And I'll tell you, I'd rather get the 5 or the 4 likes of myself, and if I add a couple groups like Love Inc. or maybe the HRB, or maybe I like myself from Yeshua, or I have all these identities, I'd rather get them from myself and be my own amen corner and pat myself a little bit on the back for posting something great instead of posting the kind of garbage and wonder why nobody follows the guy, because most of his posts he doesn't even have the 1 like. In other words, nobody's listening. Nobody's following. Kind of like CNN in comparison to Fox News. There's nobody listening. People think that CNN is bringing this grave threat to the next election for the Senate and for the Congress, and my response to you is, are you kidding me? Their numbers are lower than ever before on the mainstream media. Nobody's listening. It's the same freak shows that have always been listening to those networks that are diehard, libtard, and they're going to stay there in their mind. They're going to say, oh, that wasn't very kind to say libtard. Well, maybe it wasn't. And if you want to unfriend me and you want to jump off the line right now and not like listening to us, because sometimes we got to not tickle your doggone ears to get you to wake up. I mean, I go through a constant cycle on a daily basis of kicking Marissa in the butt, who's in our rehab, and then trying to pick her back up as she's laying on the floor, wounded, like a little puppy dog. And we're raising a puppy right now, so it's very applicable to what we're talking about, because when I got to take and I got to, tap the puppy on the nose because she's biting me in the ears, or she's biting me in my beard, or she's biting a shoestring or chewing on a shoe or an electrical cord and she's going to kill herself. Yeah, we got to do the same thing. We got to lightly give a love tap on Marissa's nose to get her to not sin. What sin are you talking about, Rock? What could she be doing? Laziness is a sin. Guys like Eric on the media side of things is a lazy media professional. In fact, he's not a professional at all. And many of you that do social media, you're very lazy with it. You have no purpose. You have no reason. You just wander around on social media and waste time. And then you want to criticize the people who have focus, who have a purpose, who have a reason. So in all fairness to this Eric Henning, who decided to publicly attack me and make a joke, ha ha ha, you're really funny, Eric, I came back with a response. And here it is. Eric Henning, I have 4 Facebook identities because they only allow 5,000 friends. And I could have said it a little more clear, per account. So my goal, even though I'm trying to move away from Facebook, my goal is ultimately 20,000 friends on 4 identities, have my own page and having millions follow that page, and then represent many other pages. That is where I was headed until Facebook decided to join the anti-Semitic, the anti-Kadesh, the anti-Trump, the anti-conservative, the anti-Torah principles. They fight against everything that our faith is about. Thank you, Sam. They fight against us. And if you don't understand that there's a social war going on in this country, and they got this woke mentality that wants to stop us. They don't want our message about Shabbat today to go forth. And I'm very grateful that I have not been, kicked off, but there are others like the president himself that has been. And that sickens me, that they will allow terrorist groups and terrorist leaders of terrorist countries to have identities on Facebook, Twitter, and etc., but yet the greatest president I've ever known to this country, who has more conservative faith, scriptures, studied type conceptual mindset or mind, he just thinks like a believer should think, a real believer. And he's more prophetic than anybody I've ever seen that's been in office. If Trump thinks that he's being spied on and says it, when the truth comes out, you're going to find out Trump was right. And over and over and over, I watched this man say things where the media, the mainstream, would attack him with lies and make him, like this Eric Henning, ha, 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 Eric kind of guy. They would make Trump out like he was some babbling fool, like he was some idiot. But when he said Hillary Clinton is behind this Russia hoax, Hillary Clinton belongs in jail, he was right. When he said the FBI was corrupt, he was right. And we can go right on down the line with a list of over easily 100 things and say the man was righteous before the people. We the people. He brought forth a consistency of truth in the realm of media by having a personal Twitter account that he honestly told even the guy who was posting his tweets that he knew since, I think he said high school, since he went to military school. If he didn't know that, yeah, Trump did go to military school. And he was a highly decorated officer, even though he was fighting his own teenage rebellion. And no, he doesn't have the same religion or faith of us on Love Live, but the friends of the faith, the friends of the olive tree, the friends of Yeshua that are out there that may not get the whole thing, we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We love them. Because guess what? Just like our journey has led us to a deeper level of understanding that I may be one of the many leaders of in what they call the Hebraic Roots Movement. I don't consider myself a leader in that, but they do. And the fact is, these people are coming into alignment with what we believe as they learn and as they pray and as they grow. And I believe we're becoming, in our minds, of one mind. And if you can't understand that they were not of one mind 2,000 years ago, and Yahusha needed to pray for them as his Galal Talmudim, his committed disciples, his most committed people were not even one. So how can we expect all these different people now who have been misled by religion, how can we expect them all to think right and be of one mind? Like Ephesians 4 was confirmed by Shaul the Shaliach. One mind, one faith, one mikvah. Scribe and I have come together to have one mind stronger than any two men I've ever associated with, next to my wife herself. And she has her views, she has her opinions sometimes that may not line up, and we have to talk about it, and we work through it. But isn't that what the Scripture says we're supposed to do when it says that we are supposed to rightfully divide the word? In other words, break it down into bite-sized pieces so we each can digest it at our own digestible level so that it can be for the nourishment of our souls. We're going to be coming out with not the Jewish Orthodox teachings on Shabbat. We're going to be coming out not with the Christian teachings about Shabbat. We're going to be coming out not with the Messianic teachings on Shabbat. We're going to be coming out with a whole fresh realm of teachings once a week and looking at Shabbat in a whole different perspective. But you need to understand that our platform, I have 4 Facebook identities because they only allow 5,000 friends. Our platform in social media, whether it be LinkedIn, Twitter, or truthsocial.com, by none other than my favorite president of all time, President Donald J. Trump, who I believe, honestly, if we were all to get honest, is actually still the president, and the greatest robbery in the history of the United States of America, we allowed it to happen on our watch. Because we, the people, have been asleep. And if you don't think we, the people, have been asleep, then why do you think the Scripture says, "Arise, O sleeper, arise"? This is the wake-up zone, baby. This is the time when you're supposed to be waking up to the truth because you've allowed the liar to run rampant in your society, in your backyard. You've allowed him to manipulate and change the laws so that the laws of Abba Yah, many of which stood strong in America, where we took murder seriously, where we took stealing seriously at one time in the United States, and now Sand and I are up to do our vows, and we land in Reno, which has turned totally like California, totally libtard, and we got some person comes into this Dollar Tree that we're buying a few organic supplies at, because they do sometimes have some good stuff, and they walk out with a basket full of stuff. And the manager says, "Hey, get back here, quit stealing from my store." And I run to the front, and I ask the young guy at the counter, "Well, did you call the police?" He said, "They won't come." "Did you call the police?" He said, "They won't come." See, this evil man who is in power right now, who stole an election, said there's a new normal that's going to come to America. And that new normal is obviously lawlessness is going to become a normal. It's going to become acceptable. And the prophets told us about this a long time ago. We can find it in Yeshayahu or Isaiah. We can find it in Jeremiah. We can find it in Yeshayahu or Ezekiel. We can find it all over the place. Even Yeshua himself prophesied, there's going to come a time, there's going to come a time, there's going to come a time. Well, guess what? That time is now.
and it's very sorrowful for us that want to obey the law. For those of us that want to trust Yah, sorrowful for us. This is the beginning of sorrows. That's prophesied. It says there will be a beginning of sorrows. We're in that beginning. We're not the end yet. We got some time before the end. But what this is going to do is it's going to be so radical, where they're actually wanting to put, things into a child's body because they're manipulating that child into thinking that they don't want to be a little boy anymore, so that they self-castrate and they lose their testicles and their reproductive organs because it dissolves their testicles. They're doing it in public schools. If we want to turn our head and pretend that we are not living in the last days and the beginning of sorrows, we can turn our heads all we want. Oh, Rock, why are you doing this on Shabbat? Couldn't you save this message for Hebrews News on a Sunday morning? I wanted to really, have a happy meal today. I wanted you to teach me something that would make me feel happy. I wanted you to do Mind of Messiah motivation today. Why do you got to always teach so hard? Why do you always got to preach so hard? Why do you got to always have these negative messages? That's kind of negative, isn't it? Well, you know what? If the truth of the negative world, by exposing it, by confronting it, by asking you if you will stand with me in rightness and not fall to wrongness and darkness, but stand in the light with me and shine bright with me in this evil world, if that's such a bad, negative thing, then too bad, so sad for you that you have that wrong way of perceiving what I'm trying to say. Because it's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is, in the beginning of sorrows, as these people are running out, you need to be loud enough in that store to stand up against all those people like I was and start saying, what has happened to the state of Nevada? Have you people lost your mind? And I went on to say, my Cadillac Escalade was broken into in downtown Las Vegas, and they stole thousands of dollars worth of stuff, including my best friend's clothes, his Harley boots, which are $100 boots in and of themselves. The guy didn't have any clothes to wear. My computer was stolen. Their computers were stolen. Their tablets were stolen. Their phones were stolen. It was a nightmare. And we had the same thing as a Dollar Tree stealing a couple of items. Oh, the police won't come. You can come down to the station and file a report. We went down to the station and the station was locked. They didn't even have police on duty. This is in Sin City, United States of America, Las Vegas, the Strip. What the heck is going on with the leadership of this country? We got a bunch of nutcases that are in charge of state governments, and they're creating a new normal, all right? A normal of lawlessness that you and I are either going to shut up and take it, or we're going to stand up and fight it. I'm asking you to be a Galal Talmudim today. I'm asking you to be a committed follower of Yahushua Mashiach. And Yahushua says you have a right to protect your family. You have a right to protect your children, which means you have a right to carry a gun and a knife, a machete. Because you darn well better believe the criminal's going to have a knife, and when he pulls his little switchblade on me, I'll pull out my machete and I'll chop his arm off. If you don't think it's real, go out to my Escalade right now. Go out to my Chevy truck right now. I got a 3-foot machete under both seats. I got a hunting knife to the left that's about an 8-inch blade. I got an axe in there ready to chop somebody in the freaking head if they come after my wife. Nobody's going to rape my wife, not on my watch. If you think Yeshua would have ever promoted for you to not protect your family, then you don't understand what he says in his good news. His good news is against that lawlessness of rape. Why do you think the story of Dinah exists amongst the 12 tribes or the 12 sons of Jacob, of Yisrael? Why do you think Dinah, the only daughter amongst 12 sons, why do you think the story of her rape is in there in the first place? This is what Marissa does not understand. Why do I want you to watch these scriptural movies? Because if you don't understand Genesis, you are never going to understand the good news. If you can't get the Bereshit, or in the beginning, everything that's in the good news that Yeshua lived was established in the other 6 covenants first. So you've got to watch the movie Abraham. You've got to do the assignment. You've got to watch the movie on Isaac. You've got to watch the movie on Jacob. You've got to watch the movie on Yosef, because Yosef covers all 12 of the sons. And there could be another 1,000 movies that could be produced on each of the sons, including Yehuda and the line of Yehuda that eventually led to Yahusha through David, King David. And there is a movie on David that Marissa needs to watch, and there's a movie on Solomon that she needs to watch. There's a movie on each, including Daniel. She wanted to watch the movie Daniel. Well, Daniel's a great movie, but if you jump to Daniel but you haven't already seen who Abraham is, what do you think Daniel is based off of? Daniel's based off of in the beginning. Everything goes back to the beginning. Everything goes back to the garden. Boy, you're all over the place today. No, I'm not. I'm right on. Because you can't understand the Torah, the Torah, the instructions, the law, the commandments. You can't understand his ways, the way, the truth, and the life, Yah's ways, Yahweh. You can't understand the path of perfection that's in Yahusha's life if you don't understand the perfection that he was following, which was the instruction manual. He followed it. He was it. Because he was, as Yehochanan 1, the first book in Yehochanan says he was a living word because the word became flesh. That's Yahusha. That's him. So how can you tell me you follow him if you don't even know what the essence of him is, which is the Torah? Why do we teach Torah? On love for truth. Well, what am I supposed to do? Make up the morals and values of life and get you to believe my philosophies as a man? And create another religion? Create another denomination? No! No, 1,000 times no. You need to follow what he said, not what Rock said. All Rock is a parrot. I'm just repeating what he tells me to say. He's talking right now through me. I'm not even talking. How else could I just go on autopilot like this if I was trying to say what I had to say? Man, give me a break. And Scribe knows, because I told him it would happen for him like it happens for me if he'll just trust him and open up his mouth. And then guess what? All that stuff that's already written on the tablets of your heart, because you studied, in the right time, in the right place, in the right season, with the right people, you're going to open your mouth and it's going to come flowing out, and you're going to go, wow, wow, that was really good. I don't even know how I could have said that. It came out so eloquently. That's called speaking under the breath that's coming out of my mouth, that's vibrating against this phone right now. The breath, the breath, the breath, the ruach, the ruach, the ruach, the breath, the ruach, the breath, the ruach. He's breathing through me. Hallelujah! I love it. It's a cool gift. But the gifts sometimes come with a lot of trials, tribulations, failures, falling on your face, experiencing your inadequacies of, or lack of, or ability that you didn't exercise of doing the word. So in other words, all the times I failed, if I share those with you as experiences, you guys relate, because you're maybe still failing. And you haven't overcome that yet. Even in your own thinking. The stinking thinking that we used to talk about in network marketing, we talked about it in AA, we talked about it in NA, we talked about it at the clubs. You got your thinking wrong, and all we're trying to do here is get your thinking right. And, of course, you can hang up at any time. You can delete us at any time. You can block us at any time. No one's forcing anybody to listen. Just like nobody forces anyone to go to CNN or Fox or Newsmax or Epic Times or Trump Social. Nobody forces you. You have a choice. That freedom still exists in the land of the free, the home of the brave, and you can create the new normal for you and your family. And you could say, as for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh, and that's it. End of discussion. You cannot stop me, even on the pain of death. If they're going to come in and chop my head off and torture my children right before my very eyes, we will not denounce the name of Yah. We will stand with Yah no matter what. So I said to Eric Henning, I said, I have 4 Facebook identities because they only allow 5,000 friends. I am an admin of over 20 plus Facebook groups that have well over 100,000 plus people in them. I'm not only an evangelist missionary who is unified with 200,000 ministers in 135 countries, but have been working in reach and outreach in AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery, rehabilitation type programs, clubs, churches, mental health facilities, prison systems, and numerous social networks, blogs, forums, etc., etc., etc. I am a social media marketer and have been contracted as a marketplace minister indirectly as a business broker in agency development. Unfortunately, Facebook, Twitter, Google, and others whom I've worked with have manipulated the algorithms, destroying the various traffic building techniques that have normally reached millions, most of which was part of an anti-Trump political activism that mainstream media, along with big tech, has taken. TrumpSocial.com/hey whatever is definitely the future. But in the present are stolen contacts from kindergarten, grade school, high school, college, jobs, families, friends, and even Mishpachah, faith family. Fighting back is the strategy of continuing inReach into this social networking environment to continue intimate communications and loving my neighbors as commanded. More communities of communications, more potential love relationships. I'm living my life on purpose. How is it with you? Why are you here on Facebook? Passionately, Kevin Rock Rice, Shaliach Bahaba, Overseer of Love Inc., 866-727-LOVE, 866-777-YAHWeh, RevRock at Yahweh.love. Rock Rice, business broker, agency developer, 877-439-9428, 414-333-0593, 480-206-5620, 702-787-6549, 772-324-0930, rock@heywhatever.com. I'm not hiding. I am not running away from the enemy. I am standing up against this evil new normal in our society. And when people that are sleeping, like Eric Henning, want to get out on the internet, a lot of you, if they said something to you or looked at you even the wrong way, you stick your tail between your legs like the coward that you are, and you run. You are not a warrior for Yah. You are not a winner for Yah. You are a coward for the devil. And that's why this country is messed up. It's very people just like you who have not been willing to stand up against the evil, and we've allowed the minority of freak show people who want to have their sexual body parts manipulated. And then they want to shove that onto our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and even our very children, and even onto us. They want to try to tell you because you were sexually abused by someone of the same sex when you were little, they want to try to get in because they know those demons are in you now. So they want to try to tell you that you are gay, you are lesbian. The devil knows the strategy, and he knows how to trick people into falling for it. But at the end of the day, the free will choice that your Abba Yah has given you always rises to the occasion of fighting or retreating. Will you fight with me today? Will you fight for the right for us to celebrate a Shabbat? Whether you're buying into the Jewish Orthodox way of doing it, or the Enoch lunar calendar, or the Enoch solar calendar, whichever it might be that day is going to fall upon, we're going to, at this point in time, we're going to acknowledge all three, the Jewish Orthodox, the solar, and the lunar. We're going to say, okay, there's 3 different Shabbat days, and really there's like 8, according to certain calendars. If you do your research, if you study to show yourself approved. Because I'm still studying, and at this point, the jury has been out for the entire time that Sandra and I have been together. We have not come to the exact conclusion, and I probably will not feel Yahfinite until I get my own telescope, until I start acting like Abraham and watch the revolutions, let's use that word, the revolutions of the sun, the revolutions of the moon, the constellations, the stars and the planets. Until I do that for myself, I'm probably not going to be settled in my Ruach, man, because otherwise I'm just trusting someone else, and there's just so much propaganda it makes it really hard, just like it's making it hard for you right now to trust me. I know you don't trust me 100%. And that's okay. Because you probably have figured out that I don't trust you 100% yet. Because I watch your behaviors and you make me really nervous sometimes in the way that some of you behave. So whatever it is that I'm doing that's making you feel a little uncomfortable, I get it. Because you make me feel a little uncomfortable too. All I know is that we're supposed to get out of that uncomfortable, and we're supposed to become one and agree on what the subject of emet or truth is. Because according to Ephesians 4 and Yehukanan 17, there's only one truth. Yeah, only one. So if what Yami is teaching in the morning is not completely lining up 100% to what I believe that praise, prayer, decree, and declare is supposed to be, then we have to work that out. We have to come together on truth. If Scott Scribe Pratt is teaching that wealth of wisdom is something different than what I believe it's supposed to be, then we have to come together on what that truth looks like. And it has to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us, yeah. And likewise with Stand on the Promises, and likewise with the prison programs that are being led by Stephen Shipley, he is our leader. He chose to be that, and he's earned that right because he has studied and he is committed to us. And we have to give him all the resources necessary to get everything done on the inside, because tomorrow he will have his third meeting and he's got 3 more people attending this week. And maybe even more because he's still recruiting today. And it's a lot harder to recruit on the inside than it is for us on the outside. So if he was able to pull a congregation of 7 together in 3 weeks, what's your excuse? Why don't you have 7 followers in your group? Whatever that group is. We're not saying that we're only going to be one group. There's going to be many groups in this Mishpachah that is all supposed to be thinking as one, but we may meet sometimes with 2, whenever 2 or more gather in his name. And sometimes we might meet in 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s and 7s. It may be. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'd rather have 700 house of worships with 7 people for a total of 4,900 than one mega church of 5,000. Why? Because those 4,900 people, those 700 house of worship scattered across the United States of America, land of the free, the home of the brave, will make a stronger impact in the oneness of the whole than that lukewarm, you're getting spit out, you workers of lawlessness group of 5,000. We are truth teachers, and we will stand on the emet, and we will worship him in Ruach and emet no matter what. And that is it. Period. There's no debate on it. If you don't agree with me as Shaliach, that we are going to be a Love for Truth network, that we're going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and that's what we're going to believe, and that's what we're going to try to work towards, to constantly figure out what that means together in study, to show ourselves approved unto Yahweh, not to the religious grand poobah, not to the Pope, not to the bishop, to Abba Yah, his only begotten Son, Yahusha, the high priest of our life, of our ministry, that lives inside us in the temple that he has created you to be. I don't want a commentary on this half of the show or the program or the reality radio. I don't want a commentary. I want a prayer only. And we can bring our commentaries to the second half. I'm not talking in the second half. I'm going to let all of you all think for the next hour about what I said. And if you're willing to stand with me and our Abba Yah and his only begotten Son, Yahushua Mashiach, in the Ruach HaKodesh that breathes into you, if you're willing to stand with me, I want you to express that in the second half of the program. And why are you here? Why are you here? What's your purpose? I'm so grateful I got to hear my wife articulate her purpose as a wife, as a woman, as a Galal Talmudim, as my best friend. I got to hear a lot of her plan of action, her purpose in this 10-year vow renewal. And it was yasam to me, music to my ears. I'm so excited, more excited than I've ever been in my marriage. And my cup overflows with hope that we're only going to grow and get better over the next 10 years. That's exciting. So we're going to have an hour of worship, family fellowship, mishpachah, big time. Enjoy yourself. But while that's going on, I want you to be contemplating how I've stirred you up and express that in the second half of this program today. Express why you are here with us. As for me and my house, home of Shalom, we will serve Abba Yah no matter what. No matter what. We will serve him. So Scott Scribe Pratt, all I'm asking for you to do at this time is pray over everything you've heard. Wrap it in Ruach. And when you say Yamin, music is going to start. And we will have some time to meditate and think. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Take it away, my brother from another mother.
Hallelujah. Can everybody hear me?
You are loud and clear, and I love it.
All right. Excellent. Wow. Hallelujah. Abba Yah, in the name of Yeshua, we just thank you for this morning. We thank you for Shaliach Rock's energy. We thank you for the message that was delivered, because it is an absolutely incredibly necessary, totally accurate, on fire, on point, socially necessary message if we have any desire to live in righteousness in you, with evidence of Ruach and Amet in our lives, or breath and Amet. Yeah, as Rock was talking, you hear the aggravation in his voice, and I can understand it, because you got people talking out of an opening more closely related to their fifth point of contact than the one closest to their brain. Abba, the truth, the effectiveness, the power, the righteousness that is necessary to walk as a Galal Talmudim, does not happen by accident. It's not acquired by mistake. It's not acquired during 3 hours a week on a Sunday morning, another 2 hours of Sunday night, and then Wednesday service. It doesn't do that. You don't work like that. This is a 24/7 volunteer army that you have called to be the staunchest, morally upright, physically courageous individuals that ever walked the face of the planet. We have your support. You have enabled us to build the kingdom of Shamayim with the hearts and lives that are lost and dying and sick and polluted, maybe not even by their own fault. But that's where we're at. We have to pull them out, and that's not going to come it's not going to come by being fickle. It's not going to come by being fearful. It's not going to come by being uncertain. Abba, if people have any doubt that water is wet and the ground is hard, then I'm sorry, but they're not fit yet. And they need to sit back and take the cotton out of their mouths, or take the cotton out of their ears and stuff it in their mouths, and listen and absorb and be the sponge, and let the dew of Shamayim wet that sponge so more can be absorbed. But there is no possible way I'm going to touch on every point that Rock spoke about. But as far as defense of family, as far as defense of righteousness, as far as opposing darkness, if we claim any attachment to your light, we should know better. Abba, we thank you for the passion of Rock. We thank you for the commitment of Rock and Sand. We thank you for Shabbat. Yah, we just ask that you help us to go forward through this Shabbat in fellowship, in a Hava, in a Met, in righteousness, giving you glory in all things. In the name of Yeshua. Hallelujah. And Yamin.
Hallelujah. All kavod, hallelujah.
Don't you know you belong? You belong. You belong. Don't you know you belong? You need to know you belong. You belong to him. It starts with our hearts. Our Oh, it starts with the heart. Oh, it starts. Father, lost for you. He loves you. He wants to hold you. He knows you by name. He knows what you are. He knows you. He longs to hold you. To hold you. To hold you. There's nothing you can do to separate that love. Your soul is just waiting. Your soul is waiting for you to come home. So 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 come home. Come come home.
won't tell you that he loves me. I won't tell you that he saved my life. But I can say it loud and clear, as I can sing from my lips to yours, is that there's one of our God in every one of our lives, and that's why we sing Shema Yisrael Adonai, Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Oh, and that's why we sing Shema Yisrael Adonai, Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Oh, and that's why we sing. Controls my life. I won't tell you that to have his love would be my everlasting price. But I can say it loud and clear, as I can sing from my lips to yours, that there's one of our God, our near time need of everlasting life. Shema Adonai Echad. Oh, and that's why we sing Shema Yisrael Adonai, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Oh, and that's why we sing Shema Yisrael Adonai, Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Oh, Echad, and that's why we sing Shema Yisrael Adonai, Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Oh, and that's why we sing.
Prima in Yahweh. עושי שמיים וארץ, אל יתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שמרך, הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל, יהוה שמרך, יהוה צילך, על יד ימינך, יומם השמש לא יכך, וירח בלילה, יהוה ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, יהוה ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד
מלאכי ישרת, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. בואכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ברכוני לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. זכיכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שלום עליכם, מלאכי ישרת, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ברכוני לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלאכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. זכיכם לשלום, מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון, ממלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. הקדוש ברוך הוא.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבטחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבטחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, הנה הנה מה טוב, לילה 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 לילה, הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לילה 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 לילה. It's like precious oil flowing down the beard of Aaron, from the top of his head to the edge of his robe. Hine ma tov, hine ma tov u'manai, shevet achim gam yachad. הנה מה טוב ומעניים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לילה 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 לילה. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לילה 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 לילה. Descending upon the mountains of Zion, for there the Lord commanded blessing, life forevermore. Hine ma tov u'manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manai, shevet achim gam yachad. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב.